I always look at carbs. Do you have them on your plate, and are they enough? And then the second thing is just you do need protein. Everybody needs protein with every single meal, but a lot of athletes will just add too much protein and kind of like restrict on the carbohydrate because they want to manage their body composition. So usually that's where the power is. It's coming from the carbs and a lot of education. It's not the same to say have Skittles for a snack versus have a banana or fruit or more of a complex carb. I always look at the carbs, and for the most part, most athletes that I see, at least especially the first time, they're under eating calories, but also.
Hello and welcome back to the People Run podcast. So there's a lot of noise out there when it comes to nutrition and some good stuff that we know now by default just because so much information. That's why I sought out Carla, who's a registered dietitian, to go through some myths, some do's, some don'ts, and just talk overall nutrition for sports, endurance, us runners in general. So without further ado, thank you, Carla, for hopping on and being on the People Run podcast. How you doing and how's everything going?
Fitz, no, I'm honored that you reached out. I'm always happy to share any nutrition tips that can help everybody, but specifically athletes out there. I know how much misinformation is out there, and so happy to share what I know and set the record straight on some of these myths or crazy things that sometimes runners especially follow.
Let's start with number one right away. You are a registered dietitian. Ken, for the listener, we discuss the difference between your average sports nutritionist versus an actual registered dietitian.
Yeah, I guess the basics would be whenever you see the title registered dietitian, I hate the title being dietitian because it implies diet, right? Which it really does have like a negative connotation for most people, even for us, for dietitians. We don't really love that title. But whenever you see the RD next to a person's name, it means that person went through a lot of education for it. And as of now, in order to be a dietitian, you have to have a bachelor, so 4 years of a nutrition degree program or science-related program with a lot of nutrition classes, which include the chemistries, all the anatomy, physiology, very scientific, science-based, right? And then they have to get a master's in nutrition and then complete a 1-year internship. So it's about 1,200 hours of practical experience under another registered dietitian within 3 different areas. The difference between that and a nutritionist is that a nutritionist doesn't have it's not a specific definition, right? Anybody can be a nutritionist. Nowadays, there's a lot of online universities that are offering that degree. And I'm not saying that they're bad. It's just that they're shorter or they're more surface level. It doesn't go deep into the science of it, into the chemistry of things. So when I hear things of like, you have to be fasting for a week or 3 days in order to be healthier, it's like, not really. All you have to do is have that next healthy meal. And that's it. There's no detoxing of your body because we have a system for detoxing itself, right? So when you understand the physiology, the anatomy, the chemistry behind it, you can make more informed decisions.
I'm assuming you got to fall in love with this. You said a lot of hours into this, master's studies, a lot of schooling.
You have to like it. And I'll be honest why. Because one, it's not a high paying field, right? So anybody considering studying nutrition, just know that, some dietitians do make it, but it's not, you don't go in it for the money. You go in it because you like science and you like helping people. And personally, what happened to me is I realized that nutrition was really the root of health. Doesn't matter what other chronic condition you have, what other disease you have. You can take, if you need medication, you need the medication, but nutrition will always be at the root cause of helping you manage, prevent, reduce, having to take medication or the dose of the medication, the frequency that you have to take the medication. So that's why I went into it. So it was more of, I was a nerd like you. Like I wanted to find out more about the body, right? And so that's how I got into nutrition. And my approach has always been just say yes to anything that's exciting that even if you don't know how you're going to do it, you learn in the process because it's what you like. And so I joined a run club, started running. I met friends that were triathletes and started doing triathlons. So all these things kind of influenced me and took me into a path of sports nutrition. Because once you're in it, and this was talking about maybe 13 years ago even, there wasn't anything on sports nutrition that I knew. There was only one main dietitian nationally that was like the sports dietitian. Yeah, the person, but I just saw so many runners. And personally, my first half marathon, I completely bunked. Like I stopped by the bathroom. I did all the running mistakes, and now I coach runners like what to avoid, how to prevent this. And to your first question of like how do you get into sports nutrition, I think I always recommend you have to be an athlete in one way or another because it's hard for somebody whether they're a teen like middle school, high school, or a professional athlete. They're not going to go for somebody that doesn't understand their sport or doesn't understand the ins and outs of putting nutrition in practice or how can nutrition help you. um but I find that most sports dietitians have done a sport at some level at some point in their lives, and they generally love it. It's also that boost, that edge that
Yeah.
you can give a person to have not just a faster time but a better race experience, right?
Talking on that, before we get into like some deeper topics, like walk me through some of your running experience. Not only are you a registered dietitian, but you run as well.
Yes. So I started running. I ran, but I'll say that the running is really more like therapy. It's always been since I was in high school. I never joined a team because I moved from Ecuador very young in like for high school basically, and I didn't know how to get into any of the teams, which is a major regret that I have. Like if I had that door open, who knows? Who knows where I'd
Yeah.
be? The Olympics. No, I'm not that good. I'm not really good. I do it because I love it. And so it was really through running, trying to forget, just the stresses of life when you're in high school, which is really like tests and relationship things. One boyfriend that I had, ex-boyfriend, broke up with me and told me, "Hey, you should check out this run club in the city. This is South Beach Run Club back in the day." And he's like, "Hey, you should check it out. It's going to help you get over me," kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're going to meet
Wow.
people, and yeah, that's exactly how it was. And now I thank him because when I started going to this run club, I would go every Thursday back then. Then they opened a new run club, still same leader, Brickle Run Club on Tuesdays. So every Tuesday, every Thursday, I went to run, which was my fix of like stress reliever. I just felt so much better after the run, throughout the run, but after the run. And then I met a lot of new people, which is how I met this group of triathletes that got me into triathlons. And it became about the social aspect of it. And I was hooked. Fast forward to like maybe 10 years later, I met my husband there, who's actually the leader of the run clubs. And so yeah, I have to thank him for that. But that's how I started running. It was always like on the more mental health aspect of it. I call it my therapy. I'm a better person, happy
Yeah.
person, now happier mom when I get to run.
That's amazing. So you mentioned you've studied this for a while. What have you seen that like fads have you seen that work now that were a big thing in the past and no longer work? Like one that comes to mind right now, I don't hear it as much nowadays, and I don't think most people are doing keto comes to mind. But what kind of
Yeah.
nutrition fads have you seen come and go?
So in general, just come and go. There's so many. I mean, keto is a big one that's still around. A lot of people, and I think even runners, like we want to believe that keto works because it sounds great. Like I think
Fat
that's
oxidation,
one of
yeah.
those. I think it gets so many of these people's attentions because it sort of makes sense. Like let's switch our metabolism to burn fat. I have a lot of extra fat. Let's burn that. It's just that unfortunately it's not how it works. And throughout the years, there's been decades of studies about this. They haven't found it to be beneficial or advantageous for runners, for endurance athletes. That's one of those things that every time that I get an endurance athlete with me, I had to go through the science. Let's break it down. This is how it works. Yes, you can use it. Some people will be able to, complete a race and feel good with it, but it's not great. It's not optimal, right? There's
Yeah.
always that edge that I talk to people about, right? Like, one thing is to complete it, to get it done, but there's always going to be, if you do it, when you incorporate carbs, it's there is something more to gain there. I'd say fasted workouts is another one that, yes, a lot of people can do it, but it's not optimal. I guess I'm always talking about what's good and what's optimal. That there's a
Yeah,
big difference,
that
especially with
works.
competitive athletes, because I get that a lot of people can do it, especially men tend to thrive on a ketogenic or more of a fasting approach. At least from experience, it's been mostly men. I think just in general, the main one is just reducing carbs. Whenever anybody wants to lose weight, it's just like, oh, cut out the carbs and you're going to lose it. Yes, it works. But again, it's not healthy, sustainable, and you lose it not from the fat aspect of it. You lose it from other sides. It's calorie deficit. First of all, you're taking out a whole food group. Second of all is when you eat carbs, you also hold on to more water. You also hold on to carbs as in storage as glycogen in your liver and in your muscles. So when you're not eating carbs for a while, that reserve is gone, which weighs as well. So it's not just fat in people that when you look at a scale without looking at the body composition, fat versus muscle, you think that it's really fat that you're losing. Things that are not necessarily unhealthy, but like, for example, starting your day with like a celery juice or like lemon water. It's not magical. There's no scientific evidence to work for one thing or another, but there is research on the placebo effect of things, which is why I've learned with time never to close off or like disregard something that a person is doing. If it doesn't harm you, then, why do I care? If it's helping you in a sense, start with a healthy habit, which is going to help you with the rest of the day, continuing with a healthy lifestyle, then it's fine, do it. But there's nothing magical about water and celery in a juice form. What else? I think supplements in general. A lot of people want to just tackle everything with a pill and they forget about their plate. That should be a quote. To think that pill over
That
plate,
should be, yeah.
right? I find a lot of people, especially young athletes, wanting to take creatine, for example, or like BCAA, the branched chain amino acids, or relying more on a protein powder. And when I look at what they're eating, is really like it's not balanced. It's not enough for what they need. They're skipping meals. I'm like, the supplement is kind of like the cherry on top. The plate, your regular meals, is what the basics of your nutrition should come from. So I think that's something that I find myself talking to athletes constantly. It's let's look at your diet first, and then we can talk about supplements.
Let's talk
Most of
about
them
that
don't.
actually.
Yeah.
The supplement portion. Myself, I've been guilty of that in the past, like years ago when I was newer. Like, if you looked at my diet then, it was 3 protein shakes, BCAAs, 1 plate of chicken and rice because it was cooked at home, and everything else was a protein bar and this. And it's like, I think, especially nowadays, I no longer make these mistakes, but I see it online and everywhere. And then people who are, some look great, but do they feel great is a whole nother story. You see people like, take this supplement, and your favorite athlete online is, hey, take this protein and take this creatine.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at is here, like, often now people are favoring supplementation over food. I'll start here. Why do you think that's happening? And what are you seeing as a sports dietitian when that happens?
So what I see is still complaints of side effects. Like I feel tired throughout the day. I am sore. I don't have energy. What else can I see? I mean, in some cases, I work a lot with young athletes. So I'll say, like, for example, just being underweight. They might be getting, protein shakes and their creatine powder and whatnot, but their meals are very low calorie overall throughout the day. So I see that. I see constipation. I see what
Yeah.
else? Or the other thing is I'm not able to make my times, or I'm not able to gain muscle mass. Is yes, you might be drinking a lot of protein shakes, but it's not enough protein because you still need. I guess that's also a misunderstanding that a lot of people have, is that in order to build muscle, you have to just eat protein or just eat more protein. And what the muscle needs to grow is calories first. And then the second thing that I see is they just want something fast. They want like I don't want to think about it. It's easy. And I personally, I do get it. You pay 30, 40, $50 for this bottle, lasts you for a month. And that's all I have to do, versus when you have to think about, how do I build my plate? There's a lot more learning behind it, right? Is it just protein and vegetables, or do I need carbs? And if I need carbs, what are carbs? How many? What's good? What's bad? Like sifting through all that misinformation, they might go, they get it from social media most of the times, or it's just Google. I hate because it gives you can find a reason or an answer for everything.
Anything.
Like, the counter answer kind of thing. I have to say ChatGPT, I have my respects. I actually do like it a lot because I find it to be more objective, more science-based. I feel like it can collect all the data out there and come up with a more reasonable response,
Yeah.
closer to what a dietitian would share. It's not perfect yet. I'll have to say that. On the nutritional information, the grams of things, the calories of things is still off. But for the most part, I think it's a good start to give you a reasonable answer, right? But I think that's why a lot of people just want that quick pill, which we're seeing now with weight loss, right? And the
Yeah.
medication. A lot of people ask me, especially athletes, you have no idea how many runners in their, mid 40s, mid 50s, like, hey, I'm starting to gain a little more weight. I want to do this marathon, but I want to get rid of this weight. Do you think that I should go on XYZ medication? Right? There's many different brands, right? For quick weight loss. And I'm like, even if you do, so for athletes, it's not beneficial because it's a low cal, the impact that it has is that you're not going to have enough appetite. You're not going to eat enough calories to sustain the exercise. But then on the other side, we still have to work through lifestyle changes because unless you want to be on that medication for the rest of your life, and most people don't want to. So as soon as you stop that medication, you're going to gain the weight back. So I think that's a lot of education on my part, at least, that I go through with people. First of all, what works and what doesn't. There's a lot of supplements that don't really work, right? So once you discard the ones that don't work, you're left with a very small list of the ones that do work. And even if the ones that do work, we got to start at your nutrition. We got to start with your plate. If you're skipping breakfast, let's talk about it. You shouldn't be having or skipping your breakfast. I'm not against supplements. I do support some of them and they have their place, but it's usually the last topic that I'll address with athletes. The last one is once we have everything else down to sleep, right? Sleep, nutrition, everything else, then let's talk about supplements.
I love that because although it may sound like traditional, it's what I found works. And when you talk to the high level athletes, it's what works and what they're doing. No matter what country they are, to add even further, like if you look at the top athletes in running, they're very simple. It's like food, food, food. Touching on this, on a brief overview, because I know this could be a big rabbit hole, what should sports athletes, endurance runners fill their plate with to at least cover the basics?
Yeah. Starting always is going to be carbs. There's no replacement to carbs. And if athletes want to try a ketogenic approach, a low carb approach, try it, but then challenge that with a higher carb. Most elite runners, elite athletes, endurance athletes are basically, the name of the game is how many carbs you can consume, even during exercise, is how can you maximize how many carbs you can eat during a workout without upsetting your stomach. And there's a lot of brands out there coming up with higher carb versions with the marketing approach of like, it's not going to cause GI distress. So I always look at carbs. Do you have them on your plate and are they enough? And then the second thing is just you do need protein. Everybody needs protein with every single meal, but a lot of athletes will just add too much protein and kind of like restrict on the carbohydrate because they want to manage their body composition. So usually that's where the power is. It's coming from the carbs and a lot of education. It's not the same to say have Skittles for a snack versus have a banana or fruit or more of a complex carb. I always look at the carbs, and for the most part, most athletes that I see, at least especially the first time, they're under eating calories, but also coming from carbohydrates specifically.
Okay. Yeah, carbs get a bad rap until you start running a lot. And they're like, I'm hungry. But what about fats? How important are fats?
So I always say every plate should always have carbs, protein. Fats, I don't focus too much on it because one way or another, they're going to be a part of your plate. Whether it's if you're eating animal protein, those foods have naturally fats in them. And then every single food, when you cook it, we're adding some kind of fat to it, whether it's butter, olive oil, etc. And then if you're eating vegetables, which you should, every plate should have some kind of vegetable, then you're going to have some dressing in it as well, right? Whether it's olive oil or ranch dressing, balsamic vinaigrette, something like that. So it's not something that I emphasize to be like, and where is your fat? Because it's always there without people thinking about it. But the power that fats have in your diet is they really help recover. They help with the inflammatory response that happens from training, which is good. But we want to also reduce it after training to help reduce the soreness, to help us get back to that next workout the next day or into whatever depending on how often you're training, the level of competitiveness in the athlete. But, a lot of competitive athletes, elite athletes, they're training most of the day, every single day. So those healthy fats, specifically the healthy fats, help reduce that inflammation, and then fats overall help to meet calories. We all have a minimum amount of calories that we need to meet. And that's going to change from the weight of the person to their goals, right? If they're trying to lose weight, gain weight, it's something that we modify. Because if it's something that wants to gain weight, it's a very easy macronutrient to add on to get more calories. And then if you want to lose weight, it's another nutrient to reduce to help with weight loss. But it needs to be in that plate. So it's carbs, protein, and then vegetables. It's the other one that every plate should have. It's just that depending on the sport, we play with the amount of carbohydrates that they have.
Correct.
Or the goal as well, we play, right? So more endurance training, more carbohydrates. So we usually go up to half the plate of carbs. And then if it's somebody like me, I'm running, 3 to 6 miles every day, I go more for like 25% of the plate carbs. But I have it with every single meal. And that's something where I think a lot of people could use that little boost of having carbs with every single meal, instead of, for example, doing a high carb lunch and dinner and then skipping carbs for breakfast, or the other way around, skipping carbs for dinner. Especially for athletes that are training early in the morning, they could really benefit from having carbohydrates at night instead of skipping them. So yeah, it's that's the basics of the plate. That's where I always start.
Yeah.
And the beauty with that approach, Fitz, is that we're just talking, right? You've lived all over the place, kind of with a Hispanic background from the DR. I'm from Ecuador. We each have our own culturally, special foods. That approach, if I tell you it's half the plate carbs, whether you want to put a mofongo there, or for me, yapingacho from Ecuador, if it's pasta, if you like Italian, it doesn't matter. It still fits the plate. So that's the beauty of it too, that you get to play with the actual food. If you can think through what's a carb, what's a protein, what's a vegetable. That's it.
I want to pause just a little bit before I ask on that, and just to make a quick distinction. I want the listener to pay attention to this one. We've spoken briefly on supplements, but everything you just mentioned was food and cooking food, right? And I just want to pause for the listener to listen, like, hey, we're talking about cooking and eating real food. And what I find is, and the reason we'll get back to supplement in a minute because I have some questions, but the supplements often, to your point here, I can easily go drink a 42 scoop 40-gram protein, but guess what? I'm not getting in that. I'm not getting the fiber. It likely doesn't have high fat unless it's like a meat one I bought intentionally, which most people don't. They usually buy the regular whey or isolated whey, which has less fats. There's less vitamins in that. Just wanted to make that distinction because we're talking about food a lot here. And it's food, which is important, and what should come first. And it's often what we don't hear nowadays.
It should come first. I always say food first, right? That's our approach. But you do bring up a really good point, which is the supplements. They play a role, because for the person, athlete, man that wants to gain weight, like I have a lot of athletes that train 3 hours a day. They need 4,000 plus calories just to sustain what they're doing. And there is a limit to how much food we can eat. There's a little bit of part that I work with. It's like training your stomach to eat more or eat less. But there's also just a certain amount that we can eat without feeling too full or time-wise. So supplements have a place, and they're to help meet that gap between food and the extra that you need for those that have higher needs, whether it's calorie, protein, carbs, etc. And then it's just convenience. Because if I'm working with a student, or if I'm working with a professional that, has to go to work 8 to 6 o'clock and doesn't have time to make breakfast, well, let's talk about that protein shake. That's your protein, but how can you add the carb? How can you add the fats, right? To make it a balanced meal in a bottle. But again, I think the supplement part is more about convenience and helping meet that need, but we always start with the food first.
Talking about that, how many meals should, and I know this depends on different people, you could have someone who's working 12-hour shift and also a triathlete, but on average, how many meals a day would you say someone needs to eat?
Yeah, the standard still applies, is 3 meals, maybe 2 snacks as needed. It's more of like eating every 3 to 4 hours, or really going off of hunger in a way. If the plates are like we talked about, they're balanced, they have the carb, they have the protein, and they have vegetables, it should last about 3 to 4 hours when the next meal should come in. So believe it or not, in my office, a lot of times I don't talk about what's your breakfast. It's like, what's your first food or drink that you have? Because some athletes need 6, 7 meals, whether it's larger meals or smaller, like snack wise. I sometimes don't like to put that label. I just go off like, what's your next bucket of food? What's your next
Got it.
bucket of
Okay.
fuel? Even what does that include? And as a dietitian, I know that if it's 3 hours or more outside of training, it should have that basics of carbs, protein, fat, fiber, which is coming from the vegetables. As we get closer to training, that's when we start to narrow down and leave out the fats, leave out the proteins, because they're, they take longer to digest, and we don't want that to affect the athlete while they're training. But that would be the only exception to when it wouldn't be as balanced. It's just focusing on carbs, for example.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And the reason I asked was just thinking of everything we just said now. Like, yeah, I could probably eat 3 meals, and if it's real food, it's going to be very filling. Versus if I snack graze here and there, like that might be like seven.
Right.
uh,
It is important to make a distinction between, like, you do need a break between food. That
okay.
definitely. The sweet spot for most people is 3 to 4 hours. I think I've seen it 2 hours when the meal is either not enough, or it's an athlete that, the metabolism is a lot faster. So they get hungry quicker, especially after a
Yeah.
workout. But the standard, I've worked with just so many people, it ends up being still three main meals and maybe one snack, right? Because depending on the time that they have breakfast, maybe from breakfast to lunch, there's a 3 to 4 hour window, right? It's enough to go from one meal to the next without being completely starving. It's just a normal hunger level. But then from lunch to dinner, that might be, for most people, that's a bigger gap, and we're talking about 6 to maybe 8 hours of no food. And so that's where I recommend, like, just put a snack in there or a smaller meal in there. The reason for that is that there's a lot of research, and practical, I've done it myself. It happens to me. Whenever you wait too long to eat, whether it's you're skipping a meal or the window's too large, again, if you have lunch at 12 and your dinner is at 8 o'clock, that's 8 hours of no food in you. Maybe you can do it. Maybe you've trained your stomach to not need energy at 4 o'clock. You can just, kind of ignore that hunger. A lot of people have trained their stomachs for that. But when you get to 8 o'clock, they they're just ravenous, and you don't just want to eat your chicken and salad and quinoa. You want to eat a cheeseburger with fries, or maybe you eat the chicken and the quinoa, but you want a lot more quinoa, you want a lot second plate, and you want dessert with that. And then it becomes more about kind of like not just fueling, but also just feeling good, because you were already starving, you were stressed maybe
Yeah.
before. Now that you're home, you're relaxing, you want to overeat. That's what I try to manage with putting a snack in
Got
between.
it.
So that sweet spot is 3 to 4 hours for most people.
What's the flip side of that? Because I find that there is a subsequent amount of people that do this where they're not doing the 3 4 hour gap, and it's like snacking, grazing every hour, every 2 hours. What happens when someone does that and they're not giving that stomach a break, and letting the food digest or the metabolism a break?
I think the first thing that I can think of that will happen, obviously, is when you're grazing throughout the day, you're definitely eating a lot more calories than you think. People, when they do this, they're distracted. There's no structure to it either. It's not just like, let me make sure that I have my carbs and my protein. It tends to be like on the high carb side, so like chips and pretzels and popcorn, like things like that. Or on the fat side as well, of like, they think, oh, I'm eating healthy, like nuts and pistachios, and they end up eating a lot of that because they're eating a little bit, but like, you know regularly. So I see just very high calorie consumption from that, and not letting your stomach digest. Honestly, I can't say that there's a lot of research to it, but I would imagine that at some point over the years, and this is just because it does take a longer time, the longer that your digestive system is working, every time that you eat, there's a lot of, it's kind of like our orchestra that comes into play, where you have
Yeah.
your liver digesting enzymes, and you have, just every pancreas, everything comes into play to control how much energy you're consuming, to make sure that those nutrients are going into the cell. So, like, for example, glucose is the one that comes to mind. When you're eating constantly carbohydrates, every time you eat carbs, your blood sugar goes up, right? Then insulin comes in to bring that down. And so if your body's constantly doing this, right, that's going to put a stress on your pancreas, with which over time it can lead to a burnout, which can lead to insulin resistance, then diabetes. This is like kind of like a domino effect. It's just that, honestly, it can take years, decades to develop, right? So it's not from one day to the next. I think shorter side effect or downside that constantly grazing has is just on gaining weight, honestly, and not
Got it.
enjoying your meal. Because if you're grazing throughout the day, then when you get to dinner, you're probably not that hungry. but you still eat that plate. And so that also, on the enjoyment side of it, you don't enjoy your food as much as when you're actually hungry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of psychology to nutrition as well. But I just definitely don't recommend it. Or at the very least, make sure that those snacks have the basics of carbs for energy and protein for satiety and controlling of the that blood glucose response as well.
Talking about that blood glucose response and insulin spike. So essentially, that's the crash we always talk about, whether caffeine or food, and everyone's always like, "I'm low on energy." Correct?
Yeah. After a high sugary snack, like, if we can talk about this in many different ways, but like if I'm thinking about like a soda, right? Pure sugar,
Hmm.
a lot of sugar, without fiber, without protein, without any any gatekeeper, I call it, like el freno de mano, like something that would
Okay.
hold on that blood sugar response. That Coke, soda, Sprite, whatever sugary drink is going to give you a quick blood sugar spike. The spike is what can lead to then that crash sensation, because
Got
your
it.
body is like, what I do with all this energy? Are you going to go for a run? Great, we're going to burn it, we're going to use it. Your muscles act as an insulin as well. They open up, the cells of the muscles open up to take in that energy to get you through the workout. But if you're just going to drink a soda and sit, that gets stored as fat, unfortunately. So we start to feel a little bit tired. And then the response when you start to feel tired is, oh, let me go get coffee. Let me go get more food. And it's usually a starchy or a sugary food, because
Hmm.
that's what the brain knows to be energy. All carbs are energy for the body. Some are, quicker or slower than others, but they all turn into glucose in the body at
Got
a,
it.
whatever speed. So when we talk about carb quality, that's what I usually refer to is, what do we want it for? Ideally, it's more complex, more slow digesting, so that we don't have that crash.
When do complex versus simple carbs come into play? In running, endurance, triathletes often we're like, hey, let me take a gel, which is a lot of
Yeah.
sugar, and we use it strategically. But there could be times we're snacking on, you mentioned the soda. I'm just drinking the soda for the pleasure. It's hot outside and I'm not going to go work out. When do simple versus complex carbs?
Yeah. I mean, so just to touch on even the definition of simple versus complex, because it can be complex to understand, is, like I said, right? So all carbohydrate foods turn into glucose or energy in the body. So glucose and energy are interchangeably, because glucose is the energy for the cell, for your brains, for your muscle. When we say complex, it means that that carbohydrate has fiber in it, or it's not just, so sugar is very simple. Sugar to sugar inside, sugar to glucose is immediate. Starch to sugar, there it's a breakdown process, so it takes a little bit longer, right? So think of the sugar in fruit is a little quicker than the wheat in pasta or even in rice. It's a starch. It has to be broken down to turn into sugar. When we add fiber, like if it's whole wheat pasta or brown rice, or even in fruit, yes, it's sugar, but it also has fiber. Every single plant food has fiber in the skin of it, or in the structure, what's holding it together. It's fiber. It takes a little bit longer to break into from the sugar or from the starch to the sugar or the glucose that we have inside our bodies in our blood. So that's what makes it complex, right? It's taking longer to digest, taking longer to turn from the food form to the glucose form inside our bloodstream. The more complex, the more fiber it has, the more of a starchy component it is, the healthier overall, because it's giving your body more time to, instead of getting a spike, it's more like a wave, a more controlled wave. So it's more time to use those carbs for energy, instead of like, what do I do? Let's burn or store. It's more like,
Mhm.
okay, I have 2 hours to now see what I do
Got it.
with this. Right? Store it in a more, or use it as you're walking, as you're picking up things in your house, or going to your car or whatnot. Now, when do we use it? Ideally, we want to use the complex carbohydrates, like the starches, for our main meals and snacks outside of exercise, right? When we're thinking of exercise within the hour to even two, but within an hour or during exercise, we want the simple carbohydrates, because that's quick. That is, I'm eating a piece of fruit, my blood sugar is spiking, but I'm also running within the next hour, so my muscles are gonna
Use the
use it.
fuel. Yeah.
Exactly. And during and there's very little digestion of that as well. During exercise, like if you're running a marathon, right, or training to run a, not even marathon, but I would say anything over a 10K to getting closer to the half marathon, really half marathon, that's the point where you want to start consuming some kind of carbohydrate during the run to give you more power, to give you more energy. Um, that's when we go to pure sugar. Because if you were to eat something that's more complex, like let's say that you eat a bagel or a piece of bread during the run, then all the blood, all the attention is going to your stomach to digest it. But guess what? Your muscles also are needing the energy, are needing the bloodstream for oxygen, for nutrients to get you to keep running. And so there's going to be a competition in between your stomach and your muscles. And
Mhm.
who's going to win? Usually it's going to be the muscles because you're exercising. So you're going to end
Yeah.
up feeling heavy, nauseous, and worst case scenario, throwing up, which happens all the time in races. And so we want to keep it very easy to digest. The quicker digestion, the better.
That's very simple and elegant way of putting the simple versus complex as far as usage, and kind of I guess explains as well when we do overeat using the simple carb. But I'm about to go sit down.
Yeah. I mean, the
Versus
soda that you like, so the soda example that you mentioned, honestly, that's more for pleasure, right? It's not
yeah,
healthy, but if you do it occasionally, it's not going to make or break you. The red flag that I would point out is if that's your go to every day, that you're drinking soda with lunches every day, it's like, okay, let's make it a little bit better because there's a missed opportunity in here. Um, but if it's an occasional thing for pleasure, then, and you're a runner, especially, it's probably most likely fine.
yeah, especially post race when you want that sugar spike and you're dying.
Yeah. Yeah. But you just made me think of something because it's so popular here. I don't know about where you're at, but I've seen so many athletes training for a marathon and consuming low calorie sports drinks. Have you seen that? Like there's so many brands out there. I don't want to name anyone in particular, but there's the standard most common brands have a sugar-free version. Have you seen those?
I've seen a spike recently because I also look at all the. I'm one of those people that reads all the ingredients and looks at what's new,
Great.
what's on the horizon. I'm noticing an upward trend, I would say, because a lot of them are tend to be low calorie, and I just say low calorie because it's like 100, 120 grams. I find that low. I could be wrong on that, but
Yeah.
I have
Well, I mean
seen
low
there.
sugar. So like
Yeah,
let's say like the standard sports drink, they were developed to provide sugar during
yeah,
exercise.
I've
And
seen that.
now they're having a whole line of like no sugar.
I think I might know what brand, and we won't say it here you're talking about because I've recently seen one of my favorite brands release a lower sugar one, which is almost non existent. There's a few other gels out there that are going less sugar as well. But yes, I have seen an upward tick of no sugar. And I think it's just, this is just my opinion, right? And obviously, I'm not a registered dietitian, but just from observance, is one of those things where now maybe we're heading along the lines where people are feeding sugar now. There's always something that we fear. At one point, it was fats. At one point, it was carbs.
It
But I
just
have
on
seen an upward tick, yes.
it doesn't make sense. I see these runners drinking the low sugar version. I'm like, the purpose of the sports drink is to fuel you with carbs coming from sugar, and then obviously the electrolytes, which is a different topic.
Yeah.
But so it's in a bottle, you're getting both. The fact that you're going low sugar, you're kind of like going backwards in a way.
Well,
It's
some brands sell both now where it's like, hey, I
well,
have an
that's true.
electrolyte no sugar and I have an electrolyte with
Yeah.
sugar.
But the endurance athlete, they want to go for the low sugar because they think it's healthier, but it's not for them. They need the high sugar version to drink during their training. Not like with lunch, not with, a
Yeah.
meal. I'm talking about because then that's different. If you like the flavor of it or you just want an electrolyte beverage, then choose a low sugar one if you're just sitting down.
Yeah.
But if you're running, cycling, if you're exercising, that you need the high sugar version. And I've seen so many cases of kids that I'm like, okay, this is where your carb is coming from. Like, let's switch this to that. And then what do I hear back after a race or after a training is like, wow, I have more energy. Who would have
Yeah.
thought? I'm like, who would have thought?
I've had athletes
uh,
ask me in the past when they're like a little newer, they look at a gel for the first time, they're like 29 grams of sugar, and I'm taking 3 of these, and it's like, you need this.
yeah.
uh,
This is the difference between, I think, the recreational or beginner endurance athlete and the elite is that for the recreational athlete, they want to see how fast or how long can they go with very little fuel, right?
yes.
Like the game for them, the challenge for them is like, how little can I consume and still get to my goal to finish this race or to, hit these times with the least amount of fuel and even hydration. Because I've seen that. It's like, oh, 3, 4 miles go by and they're not drinking anything. And then the elite athlete knows better about nutrition and they're like, okay, how can I maximize?
The
How
most.
many
Yeah.
carbs can I consume? Right? It's completely completely opposite. How many carbs can I consume without having any GI effects? The thing with sports nutrition is that the training part, like as a coach, you might know this, right? Like you give your athletes their training, right? If you understand nutrition and ideally, like good balance, like science-based nutrition, then you can recommend nutrition. But most coaches out there, they don't know. And
Yeah.
sometimes athletes don't come to the coach about nutrition because they're like, okay, my coach is my running. And then who do I go for nutrition? My friends, my athletes here. And they usually share what's worked for them. The gels are a great example. They're made with different kinds of sugars. And what works for me might not work for my friend because they actually give her cramps because of the type of sugar that it has. Not everybody tolerates the same sugars. So, and these gels have a mixture of them to maximize the amount, to improve the flavor, whatnot. So gels, I would say like that's the main thing where I don't like to recommend a brand. I'm like, go to this store, buy 5 different brands and try which one you like and which one, you feel good with. So yeah, it's definitely registered dietitians, unfortunately, they're like really an untapped resource. I don't think they're as common as obviously I'd like them to be within the sports world, but at least now at the collegiate level, I think most schools like do have a dietitian on staff or consulting to provide that support. High school levels, that's where I'm coming in. I'm trying to support a lot at the high school level in sports. But it's still, I think, a growing field for sure, because we're still learning more. And it's only been, I think, like maybe 2 decades of not knowing, because we've known for a while, but like really seeing the potential that carbs have for an athlete's life and trying to demonstrate the athlete that carbs are not the enemy, I guess. There's a lot of work on my part to take out that bad reputation.
I mean, some of it I think might be to what you said, the whole word dietitian now. Like no one wants to hear diet as much anymore. Yes. So maybe there's someone on the board or somewhere has to change the name.
I wish. Trust me. That's why when people call me a nutritionist, I'm like, I don't care. It's fine. I like it better. Yeah. Actually, you just
like it better.
Exactly. It's nutrition is more well-rounded.
Can we talk electrolytes? I saw a post you posted. It was like things I'm no longer subscribing to or something like that. And electrolytes was one of them. And I'm curious to ask you because there's so many out there. Like we just talked a little bit about it now. Some have sugar, some don't. There's a couple out there that have 800,000 milligrams of sodium in it. And I'm just like, wait a minute. Typical American diet has an excess of 2,000-3,000. This is like the healthy person, sodium. I can only think that consuming so much sodium, no matter how much you need electrolytes, cannot be that good for you. I could be wrong. This is why I'm asking. But like, can you talk me through electrolytes? Yes, no.
So on the electrolyte side is, you're right. The standard American diet tends to be high in sodium if you're eating out a lot. If you're eating at restaurants, whether it's like fast food or not, just sit down restaurants, there's no limit to the salt that they're using. And it tends to be just always high. Even if it's a healthy restaurant, it's just a fact of life that salt makes food taste better, period. If you're eating a lot of processed foods, even those protein shakes, protein bars sometimes have sodium in them, a lot of sodium in them. So that's where most of our sodium intake comes in. If you're eating a lot of processed foods, like packaged foods, and eating out a lot. If you're cooking at home, that's not the concern. We add some salt, but it gets so diluted, you're cooking a larger portion. That's not where the fear is. As an athlete, though, we do lose salt in our sweat. And here's a misconception that a lot of athletes don't know is that even though a lot of brands are trying to market their electrolyte drinks as we have sodium, potassium, magnesium, which are pretty much the 3 main electrolytes, the only one that we really lose in significant amounts through sweat is sodium. You shouldn't be taking potassium or magnesium to make up what you're losing, right? We get enough in our diets as it is, whether you're an athlete or not. Magnesium could be one of those that can help with other things, but it's not one that you're losing regularly while exercising. So sodium is the main one that we want to focus on. And I do appreciate that brands have different amounts of sodium because everybody's different. And I have seen athletes losing a crazy amount of sodium in their sweat and others that don't really lose that much. And you can see that in 2 ways. There's heavy sweaters. And I'll give you an example with my husband, right? So my husband's one that he'll go out on a run, 30-minute run, comes back and is sweating for another 30 minutes while he's just sitting down.
Okay.
Right? He looks like he just came back from a pool and he has to sit outside for a long time until he stops sweating. Me, even in the heat that we live, we're in Miami. It's hot year round, but even in this heat, I can run for 10, 12 minutes before I break a sweat. Like it takes me a
Wow.
while
Okay.
to actually have a drop. Like my hairline will get slightly, wet. And so we have very different needs. I don't need as much hydration as he does. I'm not losing as much. So just in that, there's a different hydration strategy. Within that sweat, or even because of that sweat, I already know that he's losing more sodium than I am. Yeah. And even for the heavy sweaters, there's people that lose more salt than others, more sodium than others. So we use salt, sodium interchangeably, right? The best way to know would be people that lose a lot of salt know it, because once you stop sweating, that salt becomes like a crust, a layer of crust, either in your skin, or you see like the line, maybe like a little line in your skin, or in your shirt you see like a white line as well, or white patches of that salt, pretty much. So you know that you're losing a lot, therefore you need a lot. The tricky part is that there's formulas to estimate how much sodium you need, but they're not perfect. It's a lot in sports nutrition is trial and error. And I would say always starting with like, okay, a low amount, and then just keep pushing to see, on the amount of sodium that you're having, and not like throughout your day, but like, let's say on that drink, to see how you feel better, right? You shouldn't be feeling when you're exercising, or even with the next hour or two, you shouldn't have a headache. You shouldn't feel lightheaded. You shouldn't feel dizzy. You shouldn't feel swollen. We're just talking about that. Sometimes it's happened to me. I go on a short run, my fingers get so swollen that I can't make a fist. You shouldn't be feeling that. If your heart rate is like, just you take a quick break, maybe a 2-3 minute break, you stop for water, whatnot, and then you start running and your heart rate skyrockets again really quickly. When your heart is speeding up, it's pumping too fast, it's also a sign that you could be dehydrated. In those moments, you know that you need more water, and potentially combining it with more sodium. We could, there again, like I said, there's formulas using your weight, using if you have a scale. I'll recommend athletes to do is weigh yourself before, weigh yourself after, based on how much weight you've lost, which in that period of time, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour that you're running specifically, for example, however much you've lost is of water. So using that, there's formulas to know how many ounces you need to drink. That helps on the hydration side, not on the sodium side. What I recommend now, using technology, I do love technology. I like to try it. And this has been something that's been around for a while already, is Gatorade. I don't know of any other brands out there, so I'll mention Gatorade. It's the only one out there right now where they have these patches that you stick on the inside of your arm, your forearm, and it collects not just the sweat, but it collects the sodium that you're losing. So through that, it sends the information to an app and it tells you how much sodium you need to be drinking, whether you're a heavy salt sweater or a low salt sweater. That's all you need to know. If you're a low salt sweater, I don't recommend to add a lot of salt to your drinks, because all you need to do probably is just add more salt to your food. That's it. To your dinner, to your lunch, maybe a salty snack, instead of adding all these electrolyte drinks. Now, if you're a heavy salt sweater, you might need that 1,000 milligrams of sodium in a drink is considered high sodium. So you might benefit from doing that, or adding one of those to your diet. But again, it's only for the athlete that is running an hour or longer in the heat, losing a lot of sweat. And I would say even checking to see how much sodium you're losing. If you have those white patches, you're a heavy salt sweater, so you might benefit from the higher salt version. And again, it's trial of error. It's just trial and error. Just seeing how you feel. You should feel a little boost of energy, or more sustained energy during your runs. For most people, though, I mean, I see so many people drinking, because I've seen the accounts on Instagram, on all these like social media accounts, of you should wake up and have a glass of electrolyte, like a water and electrolytes, that everybody should be drinking electrolytes. It's not true. Most people, if you're exercising less than 30 minutes a day, or even an hour, but you're indoors, you don't need that sports drink. You don't need the electrolyte specific beverage. All you need is water, and then just a regular meal that will have salt as it is.
I love that. That was amazing on electrolytes and so much gems there to drop on when to use, when not to use. Um, Closed my mind on a lot of thoughts I've had around electrolytes lately. I hope
It's
for the
just
listener as well.
expensive. Think about it. You're paying $5, $6 a bottle for water and salt, which are the two things
That's
that you
on the
need.
cheapest end, by the way.
Yeah.
I know which one is that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've seen some are like $45 now for like 20 servings and stuff. And what people don't often notice, because I read the nutrition labels now, I've had a couple international trips that have made me a little paranoid on labels lately. And now if it has more than 3, 4 ingredients, I don't want it. But some of these have hidden sugars and stuff. You know, I was at the grocery
Oh
store the
yeah.
other day. I was looking for cheese, of all things, cheese, and I picked up four until I found one that was just cheese. Some of them had maltodextrin and Guam sugar. I'm
Yeah.
like, why does my cheese have all this? um,
Yeah.
so I'm
So
glad you
that
touched
as a
on that.
thickener. Reading labels is important. Just when you look at like even the electrolyte drinks, you're gonna see it: sodium, potassium, magnesium. It's the main things. A lot of brands are adding things like creatine, so you get creatine and the electrolytes, or you'll get vitamins. And that's something, when I go through the list of with my athletes of like what are the things that you're consuming. Walk me through your supplements. I see so much overlap of nutrients. Like they're having, for example, a
Mm,
multivitamin, and their protein shake. When I look at the ingredients, it also has vitamins added to it. When their electrolyte drink might have vitamins to it. Creatine, it's a mix that has, like all these
that's a
things. There's
good
a lot
point.
of overlap. That when you look at it, it might not be harming you, right? Because really, toxicity levels are really hard to meet, and it's only like a handful of vitamins, specifically the fat soluble vitamins
Got it.
like
Okay.
A, D, E, and K, that are a concern of toxicity. But then you're just wasting money. Let's put those 50, $100 towards a dietitian, towards more fruits and vegetables, towards, better quality carbs, towards a meal delivery company. If time, if you need convenience or you don't have time or you don't want to think about it, those dollars could be better spent, right?
That's a great point that I don't think many think of. There's so much things we're taking nowadays and the overlap. Great that it's not toxic, but I mean, like you said, I can spend it on all that instead. I'll add carbon ratios in there.
Yeah, pay for a running coach that can actually help you get
Running
better.
coach,
Pay for that gym. Just so many things that we could use that money
put it
for.
on the
It
mortgage, something, buy the kids a new book bag, something.
it's not a large amount, but it does add up over the years. And again, you're prioritizing something, or you're really throwing away money, because whatever nutrient you're not absorbing, you're just excreting one way or another, right? You're probably peeing it out. I've had people in my office proudly, oh, I'm with a dietitian. Let me tell you all the supplements that I'm taking. I'm taking vitamin D and omega-3 and creatine and da 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 da. Like, it's actually the opposite. I want to hear the food first. Like, if you're taking
Yeah,
all these supplements, it's telling me that your diet is
you're not
probably
eating.
most likely deficient. You're not eating enough.
That's a running thing I see often that comes up, and like deficient iron is becoming more popular now. Or maybe I see it more because I'm at altitude. Maybe that could be part of it.
It's very common in runners specifically to be deficient in iron, and not specifically anemia, believe it or not. But like when we look at the stored iron, which is called ferritin, is either low or borderline low, which is, I think, a whole other topic. I think I
Yeah,
struggle with that. It's my pet peeve, because a lot of doctors will kind of like discredit it with just saying like, oh, it's normal. But for an athlete,
yeah,
going back to the what's good and what's optimal, right? What's good normal is not optimal for an athlete. And
exactly.
especially for somebody training at high altitude where they have less oxygen, they could benefit from a higher amount of, iron
Yeah, the
in their
average
blood.
doctor patient is not running 60, 70 miles per week or every day, in the sun. In your case, Miami, like, yeah, there might be some, but not the majority. So it's important to like your runner and stuff. Carl, I want to ask you a set of quick rapid fire questions here.
Yeah,
Some I made
let's do it.
specifically from you, or some info I learned from your Instagram, which I will share on the description for anyone listening. She has a lot of nuggets shared on her Instagram, and also website and stuff. I'll share in the description.
Thank you.
First thing, what supplements should endurance athletes or sports athletes drop?
Drop.
Yeah,
I think first one that
and
comes
keep.
to mind, and keep. Okay. I mean, listen, protein powders. I think it's drop or keep depending on your nutrition. Right? I think most runners might not need a protein powder other than convenience. That's it. That. Creatine is one of those that has a lot of research. There's a lot of research to back up the benefits of it from a performance standpoint, and then also from a health standpoint. But on the performance side, that's something that I would recommend as a maintenance. It could, it can help. Um, Others, for example, branching amino acids, right? BCAAs. There is some research behind it, but we are already getting, if you're taking a protein powder, if you're eating protein in your diet, you're getting that already. It's not going to make or break you at all. It's not a big, there's no, in studies at least, there's no significant benefit to taking it. So let's put those dollars somewhere else, maybe in buying the creatine or buying, a quality protein powder if you need it for convenience. Electrolyte powders would be something that, again, if you're a recreational runner training for a 5K, a 10K, even, you might not need any kind of electrolyte drink. Half marathoners, yes. I mean, you tell me, what are some other supplements out there? Because I think right now all I'm hearing is creatine. That
Well,
it's
creatine is a hype, and it's because of, to your point, studies have come out, but new studies have come out testing cyclists, which to me has been the same thing. I'm curious. I'm glad you mentioned creatine because that's one I haven't delved much in. I used it when I was more a lifter. I spent 10 years lifting before I got into running, and I used it, and I kind of dropped it because I didn't want the water weight. But it's good to hear that it is a good one. Okay, it helps it.
It helps, and I'll tell you along the hydration side, because of that water that you're retaining, it helps you stay more hydrated or better hydrated. So I do recommend it, especially when you're training in the heat. Ketones. I've seen ketones. I use ketones a lot. Ketone pills, or drinks even.
Yeah.
That's something that you should definitely drop. It's not
I'm
beneficial
personally
for
not a
endurance
fan.
athletes.
I wasn't even asked one, but I'm personally not a fan. I've tried it. I felt nothing. I've done keto before and it has worked, but I find it's a struggle when it comes to endurance sports. Protein bars is one I'm no longer a favor. I'm not saying anything wrong. If you eat well 90% of the time and you're in a jam and you got no choice, have the bar. But I see people depend on it like, hey, this is what I need day in and day out.
It's processed. I see. This is what's funny to me a lot of times, that the person that's like talking bad about processed foods and stay away from processed foods, and then I see them eating a protein bar. I'm like, what do you think that is? Right? Like it's processed food. It's not just protein. It has so many additives to that. And again, convenience. It can help. It can help me gaps. It can, it has its place, but at the same time, I don't want to see athletes relying on that. Like, that's your go-to snack. I'd rather you have Greek yogurt, hard-boiled eggs.
Here's a quick one, and I'll move to the next rapid-fire question. Magnesium, I see that a lot lately. People are just supplementing magnesium, all kinds, glycinate, and all the other variations.
I'm not a fan of recommending it for everybody. I like to do micronutrient testing. So in my office, I have like a kit. We'll test like 50 plus micronutrients to see what, is really deficient. Magnesium is one, again, it doesn't hurt. It can help some people with muscle relaxation, sleep. Those are the two things. Headaches, there's some research with migraine specifically, but I would still check to see that they're deficient. Like, where are you? What are the levels of magnesium in your bloodstream? Then start supplementing. Let's recheck in 3 months to see, if you've absorbed enough, like, and how do you feel the difference? But just going by, how you feel, magnesium is not a supplement that you immediately feel like, okay, I feel so much better by taking it. We need such small amounts anyway, that I don't, it's not a blanket recommendation. I'll do it for somebody that's struggling with sleep, that's struggling with muscle soreness, maybe with cramps, things like that. But I like, when possible, I like to start with labs. Let's get a baseline set of labs to see where you're at.
If I just finished a race or a long run workout, I'm not hungry, what should I eat or snack on?
I would say sports drink, or like handfuls of like a fruit, like a little fruit pouch. Just eat it once and done. Because the reason you're not hungry is because all the attention of your bloodstream has gone to your muscles, and you're still burning. Even though you stopped running, you're still burning, right? Because you're burning, your body still needs energy. So you should keep consuming food. And it's not a meal we're talking about, and also not waiting until you're hungry, because then you miss the window for recovery, where whatever breakdown happened from those muscles, we want to repair that with nutrition. For the athlete that ends up being like almost like with reflux and really like pain in their stomach after a race because they give it all, I would recommend just sips of a sports drink, something that has sugar, that has water, and then electrolytes, and just continue to sip that until they get hungry again. Or if they can, a lot of races have like oranges or bananas, and don't eat it all, but just, again, like nibbles of that food. as you're, stretching and, talking to people and waiting to receive your award,
Yeah,
hopefully.
metal.
Yeah, just something is better than nothing, definitely.
What's a highly underrated recovery food?
I mean, carbs.
Okay.
Carbs. I know everybody goes for the protein. And yes, we need protein, but we don't need as much protein as we need the carbs. Because if you exercise for an hour or longer, your muscles were using purely carbohydrates. And again, so when you finish exercising, you want to refuel the carb and then pair with protein, because if there was muscle breakdown, then the protein helps with the muscle breakdown. But I would say definitely carbohydrates. I see so many runners finishing a race and going for like a protein shake sometimes, just protein without the carbs. The perfect pair is carbs and protein together. Um, and in sports nutrition, we have this thing of like the chocolate milk is the perfect recovery snack because of the carb to protein ratio. There's a lot of other performance supplements that have come around, like brands that have come around with products that mimic that,
Yeah.
like ready to drink options or like even food options. But as long as it has a carb and a protein, then that's a perfect snack.
It's funny you say the chocolate milk. I saw a post about that yesterday. It was talking about new study again, which I feel everyone, including you, have known for years. Chocolate
Yeah.
milk being the best recovery and sports performance post workout and whatnot.
It is. It's the quickest absorbed by your muscles. It has a perfect ratio. It has electrolytes. People forget about this. Milk has electrolytes in it.
Ah,
And then it's also cheap and accessible in any country. Wherever you're traveling, you're going to be able to find chocolate milk. It's one of the most universally consumed foods.
I'm gonna go buy chocolate milk after this. Lots of it. It's just a lot easier.
Yeah. It's
Um,
easy, and most wherever you're traveling, it doesn't have a lot of additives. It should just be sugar and milk,
okay.
right? And that's it.
Do you have a favorite snack you carry around post run or like races?
Fruit. Fruit
Fruit.
it should be an
Okay.
athlete's favorite food. Pre-post is great,
Okay.
honestly. I love the pouches, the fruit pouches. Like, there's many brands out there, right? But like apple puree or peach mango combinations, I love because they're very convenient. They're very practical, right? A banana
Yeah.
might bruise, an apple, yeah, apples might bruise as well. Grapes, they don't taste good when they're warm, but those fruit pouches, they can last anywhere with any temperature, and they're pretty accessible. I have to
Um,
ask, what's yours?
let's see. Funny enough, we have those fruit pouches here in the house. Um, it's changed recently. I want to say post workout for me, honestly. Banana is kind of like my go to, or dates. I'm big on dates lately. Sometimes
Oh,
I'm not hungry, so I'll just
yeah,
chug down 2, 3 dates. Bananas a
that's
go to.
perfect.
Um, Lately I've been buying real bread. I say that based off the ingredient stuff we were talking about
Hmm.
earlier, but I now go to a bakery and get bread. And sometimes if I do have a little hunger, I'll like put on a pan a little bit of olive oil and like saute the bread on it because it just tastes way better. It tastes like I went to a restaurant.
Oh,
That's been a thing
yeah,
lately.
I have to try that.
And then I try to get a real meal later on. Pineapple. There we go. I can't forget pineapple.
Super
We had a
refreshing.
we had a farm growing up in the Dominican Republic. My uncle used to export pineapples. I love pineapples. Yeah.
I love fruit because it has sugar, it has water, and it has also vitamins, right? So they're healthy. To me, it's like every athlete's best friend. Like, you should be consuming pre, post, during. It's a great snack.
To your point earlier, nowadays I just pre-run since I usually like to wake up and go. I'll have like fruits or something or those dates I mentioned, and then when I get back, I just have a big blown breakfast.
Yeah.
uh,
Well, that you bring up a really good point is if you can get to a meal within the next hour, you don't need a post-workout snack. The meal
exactly.
is your post-workout snack. But again, convenience-wise, if you just finish a race and you're not going to get home for another hour or two, then you need something.
Yeah.
So it's about the time.
Carla, if people want to work with you or reach out to you to get more nutrition, we're going to say nutrition, not dietitian for now. Tips, advice, or
Yeah.
just improve, but how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way would be Instagram. I'm always there, always trying to share advice. Would be carla.nutrition. That's my Instagram account. And then I'll happy to share my email is Carla Duenas, first and last name, Carla Duenas Nutrition at gmail.com.
Perfect. Carla, I want to thank you for so much information you just dropped and spending this time with me here on the podcast. Learned a lot. For those listening, this has been the People Run Podcast. If you got some nuggets, share with someone. If you've been trying to work on your nutrition, tune in, listen to it while you're running, share with some friends. This has been the People Run Podcast, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time.